Okay, I think we're live. This will be the OpenFlip Week 2 Learning Culture, the noon edition. I'm in a noisy library area. So we're going to talk about learning culture. We've got Alex Perez here from
Hi
Puebla
guys.
and
Hi, hi.
Benjamin coming in from Aguas Calientes, right, Benjamin? Am I right? Excellent. And Kate Barker coming in from New Jersey. We haven't had Kate this round, so welcome to Kate. And I think we've had Alex and Benjamin on often. So I'll let you each introduce yourselves quickly. Well, so why don't we start with Kate, since we haven't seen her yet this round.
Okay, so I'm a ninth grade English teacher in New Jersey. I've been teaching for 17 years, flipping for about 4, 5. This is why I teach English, because I can't count. But I love technology, and I use Edmodo, Edpuzzle, and quite a few other tools to flip my class. And it's a bit blended as well. I'm not fully one-to-one. We use Chromebooks. So it's a lot of, paper and digital, and I, will dip into mastery flipping a unit, but then we'll dip back out and go to, traditional. So, but yes, learning cultures, very excited to chat about that.
Excellent. Thanks, Kate. And Benjamin?
Yes, I'm from Aguascalientes, Mexico. I teach at the Universidad Autónoma de Aguascalientes. It's a public university, and I teach pre-service English language teachers. So I teach in a BA program that we have here at the university, and I also teach in-service teachers through a new project that we have implemented using basically teaching methodologies around the SIOP model, Sheltered Instruction Operation Protocol, and been flipping for many years, always looking for ways to integrate technology with my face-to-face classes and try to bring in more dynamic activities through the use of using resources in and outside of the classroom. So happy to be here.
Excellent. Thanks, Benjamin. And Alex?
Well, I'm Alex. I'm from Puebla, Mexico. I'm a current program director of civil engineering at Tecnológico de Monterrey Campus Puebla. Mainly I teach structural courses or construction management and construction material courses. I've been teaching for around 10 years now, and I've been trying to flip for 2 years, more or less. So if there's anything you need about civil engineering, please let me know.
Okay. Alex's volume's a little low, maybe, so you might want to mic that better.
Okay,
So
let
why
me
don't we
check.
jump into learning culture? So there's two angles that I can see to attack this. Either from focusing on learning culture of our students and the big change that Flip Class does, where the students really need to take more control of their learning. Or we could attack it from the angle, I know Benjamin's doing a lot of teacher training, and I am lately, of how do we get teachers to go and do their own professional development, and we could talk about Flip professional development. I don't have the experts online today for that, but where do you think you want to attack this from? Kate?
I don't know. Do we want to? Because there's a couple of different relationships we can look at here. The dynamic of teacher to student and that kind of learning culture, or student to self, or
Right. So if the students, I mean, if you're not telling your students exactly what to do tonight, how are they going to go and learn stuff, Kate?
Good question.
You don't have an answer.
Doing it too, and they're posting on social media.
Okay. So on that side, on the digital citizenships, I mean, you have different issues than we do, or at least we're in Mexico, everything's legal, right? We don't have to worry so much about privacy. Benjamin's laughing, the foreigner perspective in Mexico. You have to deal with more of privacy concerns in the classroom, especially in public education in the U.S. and Canada as well. How can you get your students to express themselves more online? You mentioned Snapchat, but we could talk blogs, we could talk wikis, we could talk posting on Facebook or online, and deal with the privacy issue.
Well, I mean, at least on my end in my classroom, I start inside a bit of a walled garden with Edmodo. Like, it's just our class, it's just me and my students. And I introduce them to the online personal learning network, because what I'll do is have all my class periods in one Edmodo group. So even if I'm not face-to-face, let's say period 1 isn't face-to-face necessarily with students in period 4, they all are interacting with each other online. So we are baby stepping and doing the progression to a full online experience with the PLN. Once they've proven to me that digital citizenship piece, then I'm ready to say, okay, well, we could start checking out Twitter or doing some of the other things, maybe Instagram, and connect that way. The problem with me, though, is my district is very, very leery of the open internet, and they think that if I send the kids out into the wilds of the internet, that all things are going to go wrong. So most of the work I do is inside Edmodo, and then I can't. I'm not supposed to follow my students on Twitter or Instagram. They may follow me, and I can kind of go peek and see what they're doing, but I shouldn't follow them, because then that opens up a whole can of legal worms that if they're doing something nefarious on the internet, posting inappropriate pictures, I'm legally obligated to report it. I can even keep that, so I kind of peek behind the curtain a little bit there. So that's
it's kind of funny because they don't get social media that way, because people just don't know how to use Facebook and other platforms. Whereas I friend all my students now, but I immediately dump them into the restricted bucket, which means it's the same as if they're following me. They just feel better because I made them my friend. And I can choose to unfollow them, and then I don't have to see those pictures they post. But when I want to, I can go. So it's kind of weird. They don't really get the technology, and they're trying to limit it without thinking about it. So how do you get, like Edmodo, and I like using this for teachers as well, you mentioned walled gardens, Kate, that sometimes people feel more comfortable in this walled garden as opposed to be exposed to the big bad internet. Is there maybe with our students a bit of a drawback there, avoiding the issues of being forced to use that as opposed to open? Do you think the students are less likely to share in the walled garden, or more likely to share, or?
My kids, I know, they will. It's interesting. They actually share less in the walled garden space because it's filtered. They know that they're supposed to only be talking about school stuff, and then some of them just don't have the confidence to share their work, or they're so afraid of being wrong or giving a wrong answer that they're actually very quiet. This is the group I've had the most experience with this year. They have been very, very quiet, but then when you go on social media with them, or I peek and see what they're doing, they're very extroverted, but not in an academic way. Posting pictures.
Not with something that, their thoughts on academics is probably so much more exposing, right? It's not just the color of their socks or shirt today. It's
right.
What they think of their class, and oh my goodness, they're going to think I'm a nerd or a teacher's pet. What are your thoughts on that, Ben, Alex?
I was gonna tell you that maybe it's the expectation that one creates towards the academic side of it. While you're on a social media in a strictly social environment, you don't have any rewards other than the likes and the sad face and smiley face. But while you're on the academic side, you're gonna have the grades. You're gonna have your parents acknowledge of you, your partners like applause, or your partner is bullying you because you did this or you did that. So I think it's the academic thing is what may be restraining them to be in a really collaborative environment.
And Benjamin?
Yeah, talking in terms of my students, who are, again, they're undergraduate students, studying to be teachers, we basically, the interactions online either happen in our Office 365 account. We use Yammer, which is Facebook-like, but it's still within this walled garden of having to have an account here at the university. And the online spaces, the public spaces, where we used Wiki this past semester, sharing videos and YouTube. So it's kind of a split between interactions that kind of transpire through Yammer mainly, and maybe Word Online documents that's just kind of within our own class versus these open spaces. And so for me, I kind of approach it from both perspectives, trying to, and they really like using Yammer quite a bit, but I think they also appreciate having to use, for example, YouTube to upload videos that they create, so that they're aware that there now is an audience that goes beyond just me, their teacher, that there's a real audience out there. And I think that motivates them and kind of sets the standard a little bit higher, even perhaps higher than my expectations for the class, simply because they know that their video is going to be made public. And this particular semester, because I'm also teaching in-service teachers here at the university, I actually had students create videos for my teachers who teach here at the same university. So I think that brought another element to, again, this expectation of their output, their work, their products that they're creating, and really trying to show them opportunities that the efforts that they make in class really go beyond just the actual class itself, that it has the potential to have some longer lasting benefit to society if we want to get global about it. I think that they are becoming aware of their citizenship, their global citizenship, and a lot of it still, even though they're college students, requires a lot of discussion of responsibility and posting things in a respectful way, this netiquette, if you will, that's really important in establishing one's online identity. And so in our case, I can speak to kind of the students just coming into this global arena and creating content that will be associated with them well beyond the classroom.
And so that's interesting. There's the whole sharing. I was just talking about this in a radio interview, and getting my students to share on a blog or share on YouTube, like you're talking, Benjamin, or through Snapchat, is they're exposing themselves to this God. And then when they start geeking out, like I have my students go, someone from Africa saw my blog post. They're like analyzing the Google Analytics or the WordPress analytics on their blog, or they're seeing this inside the YouTube analytics, and they get all kind of excited that someone actually saw my video. That the fact that they get exposed to this is makes it that much more fun, and I think it gets them excited. They, not all, but some go crazy, and they spend hours and hours making their blog look pretty. And why not? Why not let them do that and have fun with it? Because then they spend more time on my class and less time on someone else's. Oops. That was my old lab voice. Kate's nodding away. I'm going to say hi to Jorge Rebollo here, who is coming for a visit. Go ahead, Kate.
Unmute now. Yeah, interestingly enough, the blogging piece, I love the idea of having a big, authentic audience, and having, because I know on my own blog, I get so excited when I see where my readers are coming from, or when I see how many hits. On the educational side of it, at least in the high school level, it's finding that physical audience out there to get them to read a student's work. That's the hardest piece, is that bit of logistics. Because it's not enough to just say, I'm going to throw it out, throw the link out on Twitter and then hope someone bites. With so many blogs that are out there, how do you find the right people, or how do you find that right audience? Because that's something I struggle with all the time as an English teacher. My students will write for me because I told them to, and will always ask, well, what do I got to do to get an A? Can I see the rubric? Like, they're still writing for me as the teacher, and I've been trying to get them to shift to think about that audience, but there has to be that audience there to write for and to get that feedback or reaction back from. So, and I think while as wonderful as social media is, and I know that there's the comments for kids hashtag, it still is, again, like I'm taking a fishing rod and I'm just throwing my casting out into a huge ocean and hoping I'm going to reel in a fish.
Right, and sometimes I'll do that. Christine will post that often, right? And I'll go, and then someone's writing about making a grilled cheese sandwich, or I don't know what they were posting about, or playing guitar, and I'll throw them a comment, but yeah, it's hard to give them a real authentic audience. That's why I think, Kate, it's really important that they realize it's not that important if someone comments on it. I don't know if you did. I was saying hi to Jorge here, who's a big Flip supporter and is on our campus. And same thing with the teachers. You're going to post on your blog, and Benjamin's been posting on his blog forever, and so have you, Kate. And just being able to go back, like Benjamin went back and found that he talked about Flip class in some YouTube video from, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago, and coming back and rediscovering stuff that you discovered before. The whole reflective process, I think, is much more important than getting someone seeing your stuff or commenting. But yeah, I think it really does help. It makes them even more excited.
Yeah, I agree. From my own personal perspective, and I guess I'm using my own personal perspective in sharing this with my students, but for me it's not really about whether how many people respond to my blog posts. I mean, it's great, of course, when somebody does, but just the process of having shared an idea online. Now, I think it is important to talk to our students in terms of who our target or who their target audience is, and have a discussion about, you know, reaching out to a specific group of a type of audience. But for me, it hasn't been so much about trying to find that audience necessarily. Just by having students sharing online, for me, has been enough at this point.
I'm going to let Christine jump in when she wants, but I'll mention a point there is one thing that's important to us, especially when we have younger students, is being a good model, right? And the fact that we're blogging and we're sharing on video and we're doing these chats, and I've probably got a random students of mine, I don't like calling them ex-students, they're all students forever, seeing that I'm doing this, for me, is really important as well. It's being a good model of being a constant learner and reaching out to other people. You wanted to jump in, Kate or Christine, and say hello? You're muted. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Sure.
Okay, great. I don't know. I click the unmute button, but it still shows I'm muted. I don't know. Greetings from Guayaquil, Ecuador, down here in South America. Originally, I'm from Massachusetts, and for the last 25 years, I've been living in New Mexico, but the last year, living here in Ecuador. I'm new to flipping, and I kind of had a question. I'd love some feedback on, in the pillar, it mentions that you provide to all students differentiation and feedback about the activities. What does the feedback look like for you when you provide feedback to your students? Can anybody comment on the types of feedback you give the students?
Kate?
Well, feedback for me, you know, on the English side of things, it all has to do with their structure of writing, the coherency of their ideas. I try to give them at least a little bit more than just good job. Unfortunately, a lot of it's tied to the curriculum with their writing for me, or anything that we produce. You know, I would love to be able to do more inquiry-based and more kind of like Genius Hour projects with them, where they can, you know, go choose topics of their own. But the design of my curriculum, everything's got to be tied to the content, unfortunately. So, but how do I give comments? That's a piece I'm always still working out. Like, thank heavens with Google Docs, I can, you know, leave comments right away. with them, posting on Edmodo. I can reply quickly with them, face-to-face, do stuff. If you hand it to me on paper, it always takes me a heck of a lot longer to get it back to them than I do digitally. Like, I'm still grading. This was their first test that they took in May for this market period. So one class left to go. But, like, I got 24 other grades for the marking period already in. But, I don't know, feedback, I try to give it verbally and as quickly as I can.
So, I mean, I know we've talked about this, Kate, about giving them really effective feedback as opposed to that feedback on their essay at the end, and then they look at the number and go, thanks, Miss Baker, and I'm not going to look at what you put in the comments there. What about the kind of continuous feedback, like on Google Docs, where during the writing process you can actually give them feedback which they'll actually apply to the final document as opposed to at the end when it doesn't matter so much?
Well, again, that's the design of the assessment or the design of the writing piece, and that if there's time built in for that. The one thing, speaking of learning cultures, I'm trying to get them to shift is that I'm not the only person giving feedback, and that your peers do matter. So I do a lot of structured peer editing or peer feedback. Like, I give them a list of things that they have to look for, like, is there a thesis statement? Did the person introduce a quote, cite it correctly? Those kind of things. But then I also try to push them to say, okay, well, ask the writer a question. See if there's something you want to know more about in the writing piece, or is there an area that is underdeveloped? So by having the students give feedback on each other, it increases the frequency. The quality will hopefully increase over time, but at least the frequency of it, in the practice of giving feedback as well as receiving feedback, that process is continually ongoing.
And just opening up their audience, that they have an actual audience, because that student was forced to, whether you're saying you have to give feedback on 3 different students or whatever the system you're using, I'm kind of laissez-faire and I say, hey, just publish and whoever wants to comment can comment. And I think I should put more structure on the way I'm getting my students to give each other feedback.
One point before, I want to make sure I don't monopolize.
You have a red pen, Kate.
I know. Sorry, red pen. But the whole notion of what is feedback is important, because so often my 9th grade students will tell me, they're like, well, I don't want to be mean and tell them that the student, the writer did something wrong. I'm like, actually, you're being mean by not helping them be a better writer, but by not pointing out the weakness. So that's a piece of the learning culture too, is not just giving the feedback and the logistics of the feedback. It's also, what are we saying, and that it's not, it's not personal. You're not being mean by pointing out flaws.
I think you partially just answered Christine's question to students. Do you find students need training on how to give the feedback? And I think as humans we do. As humans we do. As a foreigner here in Mexico, I keep telling people, correct my Spanish, please. Don't just nod. I can only get better if you correct my bad Spanish. And I will correct your poor English.
Okay.
But yeah.
I don't know if it's a cultural issue. We have a visitor professor this year from Greece, and she's like really, I'm not going to say tough, but she's like really honest in the moment of giving you feedback. And she claims this. She's like, hey guys, in Mexico, no one likes to either correct or be incorrect. So it has to be done.
Yeah, I definitely think there are cultural issues there, Alex. We also tend to get a biased view on foreigners that come to visit us, because those foreigners are a select segment of their culture that are actually traveling and going outside their boundaries. So there's that.
They're the privileged that can.
And they're just the ones that want to go out and explore. So and all of us are in that category. Here.
I have a question here, if you mind. While we're talking about posting and blogging and having all these comments, in any way do you take in account the comments that come from people outside the student circle? Well, the outside the teaching or the classroom, because if you post in a social media, in a specific Facebook that most of us do, they're going to have comments not only regarding the academic issues, but regarding their personal point of views, regarding their some other things that can be tied with their work. In the case of ninth grade students, if they're writing over in a specific topic, there can be the different opinions that can provoke a struggle between their peers. So I don't know if you take into account these things while you are grading, or if you like moderate what happens in the comment board.
How are you finding that, Kate, with people? Are you getting your students interactive in discussing the work they're reading?
Well, on Edmodo, for the most part, I don't have to necessarily moderate. Actually, I did have to turn on moderation for my students last week because they started posting not about school stuff, but like just making stupid comments, trying to be funny. And I actually did have to warn them and say, hey, you're really crossing lines here and need to discuss in a more academic manner than like who's going to get the greatest laugh or the most likes. When it comes to the greater social media and the wild internet, there's no moderation, and I can only hope that the students are their own filter, think before they post. But when I peak, especially, they're ninth graders. They're 14 years old.
They're not thinking so much about the future.
No!
Their frontal cortex really isn't that far developed.
No, it's a process. You're immersed.
But yeah, I think there's definitely opportunity there in all of our schools that we need to spend a lot more time on digital citizenship and for our faculty as well. That said.
And I'll brought up other feedback from other people outside of the social realm, like outside the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I have done in the past, again, using Edmodo, where I connect with another one of my teacher friends. So like I know teachers on Twitter, and I connected with teacher in Maine, New York, Pennsylvania, California, and the five of us, again, I can't count, the five of us teamed up and created an Edmodo group together that we had all our students join. And we called it Scribe City. And we used it pretty heavily about 2 years ago. And the students were supposed to kind of they were posting their working draft of an assignment, and they were to also include what the assignment was, and then to get feedback from their classmates and from the classmates across the country. Now that worked really well because I had found the connectors, the other teachers, to say, okay, we're going to force our classes together and we don't see each other face to face. So that worked really well. So now I created a nice little fishing pool, that we could reel in some decent fish. The problem with that became it worked really, really well 2 years ago, but then as people changed school districts and our access to technology would shift depending on standardized testing, again, the frequency that fell by the wayside. So much of this is tied to like psychology, like conditioning. If we're not doing it often enough, then it doesn't happen. So
right. And I found that Benjamin mentioned Yammer. I found that with Yammer is it's another tool I had to log into and remember to post stuff to.
Yeah.
And I think Facebook, we can talk about the evils of Facebook and stuff, but it's just they're connected all the time. Some of the students are moving away from it. That's a different issue. But even faculty communication is working so much better in Facebook sometimes. And I don't always want to be there because it's not very searchable. I got all technical reasons of not wanting to. But just use the tool that works. I got to talk to you, Kate, because I'm going to meet a faculty member from Alberta we're going to connect our classes in January. He got a research project funded to do that, so he's going to come and observe me for a week and then connect our classes. Go ahead, Alex. Nice to see you. You got to jump out for a meeting, which is going to be so much fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward for it. See you guys.
All right. Cheers. Thanks. Yeah, so that I got to pick your brain there.
Yeah, I would like to throw in a couple of things. I know Alex just left here, but I think he brings up a good question about really when we start offering different online spaces and environments, and we're trying to bring this culture of transparency and openness to the learning process, that it's important to encourage these different comments. And I think as long as we can tie in those comments into the learning objectives and what we're trying to achieve from the course, I don't see a major problem if things get a little bit sidetracked, as long as it doesn't become a distraction, and of course it doesn't offend others, and it's ethical and all of that. But I think that as long as we, as the educators, are trying to tie in those conversations back into objectives, I think it's I don't see any problem with it. But it also ties into this Christine's question about feedback, and looking at, I typically look at it in terms of formative assessment versus summative assessment, and really just having a lot of formative assessment intertwined with instruction, with teaching. So feedback or formative assessment becomes very much intertwined with teaching, so that students are learning along the way and they're getting feedback from us on a continual basis. I think it ties into Alex's question really about bringing in those comments, and again, just trying to bring in and tie in what we're doing in class with the objectives and giving them the timely feedback that they need. Some students are going to want more feedback than others. Some students, there are going to be certain times where feedback is important, and others it could be discouraging. So it's a very complex question, and I think it's really just knowing our students and really tying it into the culture, the learning culture. What are they used to, and how do they like to receive feedback? And as we get to know the students, I think some of those questions about when and how to give feedback become more apparent.
And I think it ties back into the learning culture as well, Benjamin, that when my students are posting publicly, more on Twitter than anything, because usually we do it completely open, former students come in and answer their questions, or colleagues of mine, either academic colleagues or ones I work with at university, jump in that are more tech focused and answering programming questions, and then they get a view back of, I don't just need the feedback from the teacher, I can get it from my peers, I can from everyone on the internet, and also they're seeing that these people that have graduated and have moved on into the real world are still interested in learning and are learning from them and want to help them learn. So it just brings in that we're not just in school to learn and then we're going to get out of school and stop learning.
I'm curious, Ken, if I could ask a question. I'm curious about how you give feedback and also grade this interaction in Twitter that your students.
I don't grade it at all.
Okay.
I have serious problems on putting metrics and numbers on things, because then if people do that to me, I just game the system, because I get pissed off about, if I have to make 5 posts, here's post 1, post 2, post 3, post 4, 5. There you go. There's your 5 posts.
Okay.
So I get upset about that personally. So what I try to do is not give assessment and points on that. But when that happens, when we have one of those rich interactions, which are like, oh, that was awesome, those are the moments that I'm going to bring back into class, and I'm going to point them out, because not everyone saw it. And actually, your comment about where's our central meeting place for this course, Benjamin, brings that into mind. There's all these things happening over here on Twitter, or maybe Facebook, or maybe in the comment on some student's blog, and not everyone's going to see everything, even just in my class environment, not about our course. And so I need to take that opportunity when we have that one-on-one time in my classroom to go, look what happened with Jose over here with his blog post, and then someone saw it through Twitter, and look at all those connections that happened. And that gets into my connectivism bias on education, and I really like to point that out. So I can't do the marking point on that. And I do admit, in the past I did that, but then my students are nerds, and we're definitely analytical geeks, and we'll game the system.
But you
Yeah.
mentioning your students in the front of the entire group and saying, "Oh, Jose, look at what he did here. This is great." That modeling, that is worth more than any A or 50 out of 50 points that you could put on any paper. Like that right there.
And at the end of their degree program, when they do that survey of who are your favorite 5 teachers and not so favorite 5 teachers, that's going to score big points there. I mean, the award for me that mattered the most, I think only once I won an award for teaching evaluation in my first semester here in high school. I got this reward of profesores que dejaron huella, the ones that made an impact on their students for alumni. And that award meant so much for me because it's students 5, 10, 15, 20 years later writing in on a form and saying, yeah, Ken impacted me and still does because I still follow what he's doing on Twitter and Facebook, and I'm following what he's talking about in education. And so for me, that's the big thing.
Yeah, I'm curious, and this is for anyone, though, talking about Twitter, have you guys had any experience using Twitter as kind of a form of a back channel? So in class, maybe they're online in real time where you're getting feedback and you bring that into the learning experience in the classroom?
Yeah. Technically, Twitter as the specific tool, no, because it's really hard to get the students here to use Twitter. What I'd like to work on more is creating other back channels that have lower barriers to entry for them. I don't get why Twitter's complicated, but maybe a different one. I will use Today's Meet. Yeah, Today's Meet is awesome. I don't know about Today's Meet. Go check out Today's Meet. I used it I was a participant in a conference last month, and I went, oh yeah, I forgot about Today's Meet, because it's just very simple to use.
And that's another like walled garden space, like
Yeah.
you know, you're contained within a classroom to do the back channel.
Call yourself Batman 23, whatever you want.
Yeah, join people you've invited into the group, so there's that little bit of safety there. I've used Today's Meet for back channeling very successfully. You know, but Twitter, no, not allowed to use social media as the big back channel. Plus, it's too noisy and distracting. You know that you know, I think it's too tempting to keep checking the Twitter feed, you know, or see what else is going on by being on the wild open internet.
It's got its pros and disadvantages. I've really found that Facebook has worked best for me because the students were just there, and I got a lot more quick interaction. But I have this bias that I don't want to use that for my class, or I don't want to push them. And I also want to push them to use a new tool, even though it might not work as good this semester for them. But exposing them to a new tool is going to open up things for them later. And my education or my teaching's not about this semester. It's about the long push. Yeah. Well, we're almost up on time, so we are up on time. So let's do a quick wrap up. We'll start with Kate again. Your thoughts on learning culture and say goodbye.
You know, in terms of learning culture, the teacher needs to be the leader within it. Modeling always helps. Creating spaces for the culture to thrive. I mean, we really are gardeners with our students, and that's what we need to do: plant the seeds of learning and nourish and water, you know, their intellect. And that's really the key piece of learning culture, so that we can have a great harvest any time in the school year.
Oh, I miss you, Kate. You got to be online more with us. Okay, well, you go, because I know you got to run out, and I'll wrap up here with Benjamin and Christine.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Benjamin?
Yeah, just to conclude, I would say really building a culture is about trying to meet some of the expectations and the objectives of the class versus maybe individual objectives. We haven't really talked about that today, but for me, I see this kind of a reconciliation between meeting both the curricular goals and these lifelong learning goals that they have set.
Transversal stuff.
Of course. And this kind of speaks a little bit to what we talked about opening it up, the technologies, so that they can take advantage of not just the formal educational experiences, but the informal educational experiences that are available to everyone just through the use of technology. So I think it's kind of bringing those two contexts together and not just think solely on the objectives of the particular course for that particular time frame.
Yeah, and then forget about it when it's over.
Yeah.
Christine? You're muted.
Yes, okay, unmuted. No, I just thank you for this talk. It's been very invigorating and stimulating. It's getting my wheels spinning, and you know, I want to share this information with the staff, so it's a win-win. Thank you.
And that's why I do this. This gets me excited and ready to go for the rest of the afternoon. Kate Baker's awesome. Kate's joined us many times. She has massive amounts of energy, and
Good.
she's a great resource. Definitely reach out to her on Twitter. Her tag was there in the bottom third piece. One thing I was going to mention that came around, I was mentioning blogging and how you created an authentic audience. One thing that's been really cool is my students' blogs from last year and the year before are being seen by my students from this year. So they're becoming resources, and they know that. Plus, they're in the same school, so they'll go, oh, hey, Fernanda, I read your blog post for Ken's homework and from last year, and I really liked what you did, and that inspired me, and that's awesome. Yeah, my shirt's making a weird more part of funky.
I've got a little something going on too.
Oh, bad shirt for video. So I'll thank everyone for coming. This has been great.
Bye.
Thanks Kate, thanks Alex, thanks Benjamin and Christine. Again, we do this every Wednesday about noon my time, which is 1 p.m. Eastern, and usually on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. local, which is 9 p.m. Eastern. But I'm moving the Thursday evening to Friday because I have something to do tomorrow, and April won't be able to run it either. So we're going to move to Friday night. If anyone can join us on Friday evening, that's what teachers do. We go out. Oh no, we stay at home. Yeah. And so if anyone can join us Friday evening, we'll do it again. Same bat time, different bat day, Friday evening at 8 p.m. local Guadalajara time. And thanks, everyone, and I hope to see everyone sharing. A lot of people are posting on their blogs. I've been adding more blogs to the roll call, so if you go to the course site, you can see other people's submissions. And like I answered Benjamin, I think last week, I said go and put comments. We're getting that more. People tend to post randomly in the wrong place, like they're talking about Unit 2, but they're commenting in Unit 0 page. That's okay, it's cool. Just check all the comments. I'll update the main page to try to show recent comments if they're not already there, and you'll be able to see what people are doing in the course. Join us on Facebook, join us on Twitter, and just share and let us know what you're doing. Thanks a lot. Have a good day. I'm going to hit the stop podcast button.